Good morning. Good morning. Thank you all for coming. So let me start by saying we at ABNY are proud fans of New York, and we are big fans of our home team. And it was a big week for our home teams. Our Knicks beat the Celtics, which is awesome. Not since the days of Patrick Ewing have we felt this way. And the Liberty opened their season on Sunday by raising their first championship banner in history. As for the Yankees and Mets, well, they're both off to great starts. The Yankees in first, the Mets in second by a hair, and we can taste just a little that most prayed for of all New York sporting events, a Subway World Series. Here's to hoping. And because it's ABNY, we know it's also playoff season in New York City politics. We are coming up on primary day, June 24th. If you're part of ABNY, the likelihood is that you are going to vote, but so many New Yorkers do not vote. In the last mayoral primary, only a quarter of eligible voters turned out, and that was a recent record. I'd ask you all, please send emails to your company. Please tell your friends, your colleagues, remind them. Please post in social. I don't care if you twirl a sign on Flatbush Avenue or down the block on Lexington. However you want, please remind people to vote, because a government of the people, by the people, and for the people only works if the people actually vote and don't just complain in social media. So please encourage your networks to show up at the polls to vote early or on June 24th, and in doing so, to show up for our city and state. And in the spirit of showing up, I want to take a moment to thank all our public servants and elected officials who are here with us today. I'd ask you to please hold your applause until the end. District Attorneys Darcel Clark and Melinda Katz are here, and Council Member Eric Botcher is here. I want to thank you all for what you do for our city and state. So there's a well-known phrase that was first uttered by a well-known New Yorker, Eleanor Roosevelt, who looked around the country in 1940 and proclaimed it was no ordinary time. Well, you have to admit, no matter where you look these days, these are no ordinary times. Now, as New Yorkers, we have never tried to be ordinary. That's not really our thing. And our speaker today is certainly no ordinary public servant. While there is no shortage of urgent problems facing New York, I'd like to highlight a few of that are both important to us at ABNY and to our special guest today, Attorney General Letitia James. First, taking on the big issue of public safety, the issue of recidivism. Our police commissioner and our 5 DAs were all very vocal, made it very clear to our ABNY community that they couldn't do their jobs well with what had become of the discovery laws. Too often, cases against people who committed serious crimes would be tossed out of court on pure technicalities rather than the merits. And when those cases were tossed out on technicalities, in circumstances that included protective orders to protect people from domestic violence, those protective orders went away. I can't tell you how many times Melinda Katz called me to tell me what a problem that was. Tish James was an active advocate to reset discovery laws and get them right, mostly working behind the scenes and sometimes being out front to get it done and over the finish line. And for that, I want to say thank you. A second big public safety issue was our subways. So we conducted a poll at ABNY a few months ago on a range of issues, and absolutely nothing broke through like safety on transit. Nearly 2/3 of New Yorkers felt endangered riding subways and buses due to the actions of someone who appeared to be struggling with severe mental illness. And this wasn't simply people saying they did not feel safe. This was 64% of people actually witnessing something on the subway that they felt threatened by, or buses. 3 in 4 said existing laws don't really protect the public. And 9 in 10 believed it is more compassionate to provide involuntary treatment and care for people with severe mental illness than it is to leave them abandoned on the streets and on subways. I should say, our poll showed that New Yorkers feel true compassion for people struggling with mental illness and really needed our government to do better for them. These numbers track across every borough, every background, and every political affiliation. Just weeks ago, the governor and state legislature came together to reform and expand involuntary treatment laws for people who cannot care for themselves. It's common sense, it'll make the city safer, and it is the humane thing to do. I want to thank the AG and to everyone in this room who worked to support those efforts. So it is critically important for people across political spectrums to come together on issues like these for our city and our state. That's where Tish comes in. I have seen her build bridges. She knows you have to connect to people in order to connect the dots. And while we do not always agree, she is not afraid to listen. And for that, and so many other things, our ABNY community greatly respects her. She takes to heart Churchill's famous advice that those who can't change their minds can't change anything. She cares about people from the state, from all backgrounds, and we have seen her fight for our fellow New Yorkers firsthand. She was one of the first calls I made back when the campaign to protect our kids' digital data and shield them from addictive algorithms got started in New York. If you have a child, you know this issue all too well and live with it every day. It's making them and you miserable. I speak from personal experience. It's taking our kids down endless, inappropriate rabbit holes, and a 10-year-old or a 12-year-old is no match for the most powerful algorithms in the world. Tish got it, and working with the governor, our state legislature, as well as Common Sense Media and the Teachers Union, amongst others, she helped get it done. The Child Data Protection Act and the SAFE Act for Kids has been signed into law, and it will be illegal for online sites to collect, use, share, or sell the personal data of anyone in New York under the age of 18 or turn an algorithm on them without the informed, affirmative consent of a parent or a guardian. As a parent with 3 young kids, Tish, I really want to say thank you for this. It's a big deal. Add this legislation to a list of accomplishments our AG has helped drive, taking more than 9,000 illegal guns off our streets, taking on the NRA leadership and winning, fighting so our seniors in nursing homes aren't taken advantage of, exposing consumer and business fraud and outrageous high-interest loans that defraud borrowers. And finally, working with us at ABNY back at the last census, we fought together and made sure that New York got the count that was accurate and the funds that we deserved as part of it. As I said earlier, these are no ordinary times. We need extraordinary leadership, and we have that in our guest this morning. Please join me in giving a warm ABNY welcome for our Attorney General, Letitia James.
That was a long intro and totally unnecessary. Good morning, everyone. I want to thank Stephen for that very kind and very long introduction. So Stephen told me, please be hopeful in your remarks. That's what he said. And I thought about that. But I was reminded of my faith and of Peter in the Bible. And in the Bible, Peter says, give the reason for the hope and do it with gentleness and respect. And so here I go. 7 years ago, when I ran for Attorney General, I simply wanted to represent the legal interests of this state and to work on issues impacting our city and our state. And most of my time, believe it or not, is focused on those issues, representing state agencies, doing affirmative litigation, working on community issues, working on major cases. I spend the majority of my time, even today, focused on those issues. And just to give you an example, let me give you just a few examples of some of the cases that really warm my heart. Most recently, we held a hearing in the Bronx regarding an all-girls school, Preston High School. It had endured financial struggles, and they announced that they were closing Preston. And so we held a hearing at Preston, and these young girls, all teenagers, said, Tish, save our school, you can do it, you can do it. Well, we negotiated a settlement, and now Preston will remain open for generations to come for young girls. Yeah. Now, if you think negotiating with the federal government is difficult, Chris, I heard, laugh. Try negotiating with some nuns. It was very challenging. But I hear Chris again. But we got there. We also have filed lawsuits securing reforms at major nursing homes accused of neglecting and mistreating residents, establishing funds that go directly to patient care. We've cracked down on deed theft rings that focus on seniors that own brownstones, seniors that are equity rich but cash poor and very, very vulnerable. We've held gun buybacks and we've taken action against criminals that flood our streets with illegal guns and drugs like fentanyl and xylazine, which is an animal tranquilizer. We have removed, as of to date, in my last 7 years as the Attorney General, over 9,000 illegal guns. We've taken on crypto scammers who are preying upon vulnerable communities. We stopped deceptive practices at 15 car dealerships across the state, resulting in $4.5 million in restitution going to 2,800 New Yorkers. We secured $335 million in a national settlement from a major pharmaceutical company that had profited off of the opioids crisis, and that's in addition to the $2 billion that we negotiated in regards to the opioids case involving the Sackler family and Purdue. We helped preserve the American Irish Historical Society, and I'm really thankful for that one. And former Speaker Chris Quinn was also very helpful in securing a settlement with regards to the American Irish Historical Society, and that's why my name is Letitia Jameson. We are safeguarding Irish history. We have stood up against anti-Semitism in communities in upstate New York that basically passed these discriminatory zoning laws to prohibit the Orthodox Jewish community from building in their communities, and we stepped in and stopped those discriminatory zoning laws. And on another case in upstate New York, we recently survived a motion for summary judgment in a case involving 1,100 pensioners at St. Clair's Hospital, which is a private hospital. The board had engaged, unfortunately, in some deceptive practices, failing to pay its workers the pension that they were due. So those are just some of the cases that we worked on and that really warmed my heart. And then there was an election. So the last 4 months, in addition to doing all of that work, we've been hard at work protecting New Yorkers against the harms of this federal government, responding to executive orders that basically have robbed federal agencies of resources sufficient to meet its statutory obligation in contravention of congressional authority and in violation of the United States Constitution and the many statutes that govern federal programs. Executive orders that exceed presidential authority, executive orders that are arbitrary, executive orders that are capricious, executive orders that are blatantly illegal. My responsibility at this moment in time is to protect the interest of this state, point blank. And at the core of our pushback is the Constitution and the sovereignty of this great state. Simply put, this federal administration cannot ignore the sovereignty of New York State, cannot trample on the powers of Congress, and cannot simply override laws with an executive order. And these, my friend, are not simply ideological fights between the president and myself, between my office and his administration. This is far removed from partisan bickering or nuisance lawsuits. This is larger than that. This is about the rule of law. This is about executive orders that would cause concrete and real harm. We are working tirelessly to protect your tax dollars, your investments, and the programs that are vital to our state's health and well-being and our financial fisc. As of today, we have filed over 21, 22, 23 lawsuits against this administration. And so allow me to go through some of the litigation and then allow me to explain those that are most harmful. First, the one that you all know is birthright citizenship, which is in the 14th Amendment. We sued when they attacked birthright citizenship. Next was OMB funding. We sued when they tried to slash billions of dollars illegally from programs that support families and public safety. Next, there was DOGE at Treasury. We sued to protect Americans' private data being stored at the Treasury Department. Next, we sued at the NIH indirect costs. We sued to stop them from defunding indirect costs related to medical and public health research. Next, teacher pipeline grants. We sued when they cut teacher pipeline grants for teachers in underserved communities. Next, we sued when they engaged in reductions in force, RIF. We sued when they illegally fired tens of thousands of federal employees. Next, HHS COVID grant terminations. We sued when they cut billions for public health, mental health, and addiction programs. Next, Department of Education dismantling. We sued when they tried to dismantle the Department of Education. Next, 7 agencies executive orders. We sued when they attacked the New York Public Libraries and other small agencies. Next, election preparedness executive orders. We sued when they tried to seize control of our national elections. Next, NIH grant terminations. We sued when they cut NIH grants for direct costs. Next, education stabilization funding. We sued when they attacked billions for our public schools. Next, we sued when they issued an executive order regarding Title VI certification, when they sued when they tried to remove civil rights protections for the disabled community, for the LGBTQ community, for students of color. Then we sued over their illegal tariffs, which are hurting New York businesses. And I want all of you to know, one of that cases was argued yesterday in the Court of International Trade by some small businesses. We are arguing our case on Wednesday, and that panel of judges at that court was very skeptical of the president's authority. Then we sued over their cuts to AmeriCorps and its programs in New York. And then we sued for the dismantling of HHS. We sued Secretary Kennedy over his dismantling of programs that millions of New Yorkers relied upon. Then we sued for the wind energy memo. We sued over their attacks on clean energy projects, individuals who relied and spent money on these clean energy programs, primarily on Long Island and in parts of upstate New York. And then we sued DOH funding conditions. We sued both the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of Transportation over their illegal attempts to condition grant funding to immigration enforcement, a blatant violation of the law, holding state funding hostage, impounding funding unless we capitulate to immigration enforcement. That's just a short list. But it shows the all-encompassing ways that the administration is attacking the rule of law. And now I'm going to go into some of those cases, just a few, to underscore the threats that our state faces. I mentioned that OMB, the Office of Management and Budget lawsuit. It was the most consequential of the lawsuits, which began in late January when the administration's Office of Management and Budget, when their leadership issued a directive putting an indefinite pause on vast amounts of federal funding assistance, federal financial assistance, cutting off funds for health care, education, law enforcement, disaster relief, infrastructure, and more. And these are not programs that have been the source of partisan attacks in the last several years. These programs are cornerstones of our city. This directive froze Medicaid funds and slowed funding for Head Start, causing some of these vital child care centers to consider closing their doors. They put at risk billions of dollars in federal funding for critical infrastructure projects, like a new rail tunnel under the Hudson River. Not-for-profit groups supporting children and families facing existential risk over whether they could make their payroll. Organizations like WIN, headed by the former speaker, Chris Quinn, or the organization that is so close to my heart in Brooklyn, Brooklyn Emerge, which provides affordable housing in central Brooklyn, and so much more. And so I led a coalition of state attorneys general in a lawsuit the day after this directive was issued. Yes, the day after, because we were prepared. And on January 31st, we won a temporary restraining order blocking their funding freeze. And only a week later, our coalition filed motions for enforcement and a preliminary injunction to stop the illegal freeze and preserve this vital federal funding. And ultimately, we won that preliminary injunction, as well as a second motion protecting hundreds of millions of dollars in funds from FEMA that New York relies upon. These programs are not abstractions for New Yorkers either. They are a lifeline to healthier children, better educational outcomes, and improvements in daily life. Our quick action protected billions of dollars in funding for programs that so many of you in this room have helped steward and safeguard over the years. The next case that I want to elaborate on is the DOGE. I'm sure you heard about Elon Musk. Back in early February, Elon Musk and DOGE began descending upon our federal agencies. They were looking for keys to the castle, access to sensitive finance and treasury systems, access to Americans' personal data, and so much more. And unfortunately, they set their sights on one of the most important cabinet agencies in our federal government, the Treasury Department. It was a startling moment in time. The world's richest man, who had aggressively supported the winning candidate in a presidential election, had a team of staff members searching for unfettered access to some of our government's most secure financial operations and Americans' private data. Our country had never seen an arrangement, and with good reason. And from there, the president does not have the power to basically give away our private information to anyone he chooses. Information such as your addresses, your social security numbers, your tax information. My office led a coalition of attorneys general in a lawsuit to prevent DOGE and Elon Musk from accessing this most sensitive financial data as they try to stop statutorily mandated funding. And we won a preliminary injunction against DOGE, his initial efforts, and we continue to monitor the situation closely to ensure that we protect your data, New Yorkers' data, America's data, and the Treasury Department's payment system. Next is a case that I want to elaborate on, which is close to my heart, and that is HHS. The core mission of HHS is to enhance health and well-being of all Americans by providing effective health and human services and by fostering sound, sustained advances in the sciences. HHS is the manifestation of Congress's interest in protecting its citizenry through studied and tested means. Studied and tested means, and yes, with some science. Secretary Kennedy has announced that the department's 28 agencies will be collapsed into 15, with many surviving offices divided or moved into other units. He announced mass firings. Several days later, he locked out 10,000 employees out of their work email, their laptops, and even their offices. And in the blink of an eye, critical HHS operations grounded to a halt as experiments were abandoned, trainings canceled, site visits postponed, scientists laid off, labs shuttered, and measles in Texas on the rise. These cuts to HHS were plainly illegal, and our office worked with other fellow attorneys general to sue the department and to stop these actions. Not only were these actions illegal, but they go against a common fiber that extends to many of us in this room, and a principle that I believed in and is the reason why I entered into public service, and that is that government and civic organizations should and have been and will be a force for good. Head Start is a boost for children. It's not governmental bloat. Low-income heating support is a lifeline, not a welfare crutch. Cancer research is a life-saving work that our country has led on for generations and is not a partisan target. And let us continue to pray for former President Biden, that he recovers, and that all individuals who've been diagnosed with cancer recover, and that we one day find a cure. But we can only find a cure if we all believe in science. I believe in efficiency, but not chaos and not disruption. Bipartisan congressional majorities have funded and supported these programs for generations, as have many of you. It is a stain on our federal government that the secretary would take a hatchet to programs that help millions of Americans live fuller, longer, and healthier lives. And if that didn't upset you, they went after the World Trade Center Health Program, which provides not only life-saving cares for those who responded, who lived and worked near the towers, individuals that World Trade Center Health Program does groundbreaking and life-saving research. And I don't need to tell you in this room the cruelty that it takes to fire the head of the World Trade Center Health Program and to stop admitting new patients. I don't need to tell you in this room the amount of trauma our first responders are enduring to not know whether or not they will receive care tomorrow. Heroes who the whole world celebrated. Heroes who will no longer get health care. So yeah, we stepped up, and this one was personal. My brother, who worked for sanitation and was at the World Trade Center and never told me, now has cancer. I'm not sure if he's going to make it. So our office is pursuing this case vigorously, and my office is in a hearing later today on a motion for a preliminary injunction. And as my fellow attorneys general and I have stood up to these fiscal cuts, we have locked arms to fight back against this administration's illegality and scapegoating of immigrants and their trampling of due process. Federal agents have snatched American citizens off the streets without a modicum of due process and sent them to foreign countries and now say, well, there's not much we can do now. Families have been torn apart as students, workers, and parents flee for their lives, unsure of whether it is safe to go to school, work, or houses of worship. Foreign students on visa who have come to learn from the greatest higher educational system on the planet are being questioned and detained, all for exercising their First Amendment rights. And this administration had the audacity to attack birthright citizen and a cornerstone of this country's century-long promise of a better life. And just about every tech company that I know of is headed by an immigrant. They have contributed so much, not only to New York, but to our nation as a whole. And just last week, we heard oral arguments at the Supreme Court in the Attorney General's coalition case defending this bedrock of our country's freedom and using the tools of nationwide injunctions in protecting all Americans from harm, because we cannot have a system where only the blue states are protected and children from the red states are stateless. And that is why we seek nationwide injunctions. Here in New York, we know that Americans are woven into the fabric of New York. They are our doctors, our business leaders, our service members, our teachers, elected officials, and caregivers. Immigrants are New Yorkers, and New Yorkers are immigrants. Our city can lay claim to so many of the country's greatest immigration stories, a melting pot for generations, mass movements towards freedom and opportunity, and above all, a beacon of light amidst dark waters of oppression. Immigrants from every corner of the globe call New York City home because they believe that here they have a fighting chance for a better life. And today, that promise is under attack like never before. This administration's actions are a blemish on the moral fiber of our nation, and they run counter to the poetry on the Statue of Liberty, which welcomes immigrants to our shores, seeking a better life. Now, I know the right-wing media will report tomorrow that Tish supports open borders. I do not. I firmly believe that our immigration system must be safe, lawful, and orderly. And I believe deeply in my core that everyone deserves due process. And I would hope that the United States Congress and this administration recognize that same belief. Because the equality of opportunity and the equality of justice, those are ironclad promises of New York and the United States of America. They are clarion principles that move all of us in this room. And they will be the guiding lights that help us go forward. Now, I would love to work with this administration. If he wants to, I understand he's willing to work on Penn Station. I applaud that. I'm here. If he wants to build affordable housing, I'm here. Yeah, if he wants to do some major capital projects, I'm here. Hudson Yards, Atlantic Yards, the rail yards, I'm here. I'm reasonable. But my message is clear. Don't harm my city, don't harm my state. Otherwise, you've got to go through me. And you can attack me all you want. I take the attacks and I just wake up the next day, say a prayer, and go to work. Because every morning the slew of news and executive orders can be dizzying. The instinct to turn it off and ignore it is overwhelming. I have people that come up to me crying because they are afraid of our government. But I've always believed that government should be a force for good. But what gives me hope, Stephen, is I believe in the goodness of people. I still believe in the promise of America and the promise of the greatest state in our country and the greatest city in the world. My friends, we are being tested. But it's going to take all of us. It's going to take all of us moving in the same direction, shoulder to shoulder, arm in arm, with no space between us, to stand up and defend our democracy. Not just Democratic attorneys general, not just Tish, but all of us in this room, together, believing in freedom, and liberty, and democracy, and that we're all in this together, inextricably tied to one another. Civic leaders, elected officials, regular citizens, all of us need to let this administration know in no uncertain term, this is our country too. And we're ready and willing to fight for it, and to use our voice, and for me to use the law both as a sword and as a shield. I want to thank all of you, and I hope I see all of you at a Knicks game. That's the hope that Stephen talked about. I thank you all. Good.
Now, I know you long enough to know that you are definitely uncomfortable with a long-standing ovation, but if you're gonna say out loud, don't harm my city, don't harm my state, otherwise you have to go through me, this crowd's gonna love you. For good reason. All right, we have time for a few questions.
Yeah.
I guess I'll start with the chairman's prerogative. I'll ask a pretty wonky question.
Okay.
It's a technological age, and There are tools that one needs to give government and to give the AG to do her job. And I'm saying is, do you have the tools you need at this time, or are there things you are looking for to best perform being our Attorney General?
Thank you. I'm sure a lot of you, many of you know there is a doctor in upstate New York who was prescribing mifepristone to individuals out of state. The state of Texas, Louisiana, and I'm missing on the third state, prosecuted this doctor in absentia. They issued a warrant for her arrest here in the state of New York. Thank God a clerk in upstate New York where she lives refused to file the warrant, and thank God to Governor Hochul, who refused to extradite that doctor to, I believe it was Texas, Louisiana, and that third state. We obviously need to do more in the legislature with respect to strengthening our laws to protect doctors, to protect their identity, remove their names from the labels on prescriptions. We have to protect, obviously, gender-affirming care, which continues to be under attack by individuals who scapegoat members of the LGBTQ community. We have to do more to protect not-for-profits. I want to thank, in her absence, Speaker Adrienne Adams, who put aside $2 billion. She, as she puts it, she Trumpified New York City against harms. I want to thank her for her leadership. The state legislature will have to go back into session to do something similar, to stockpile funds, because if, in fact, these cases and all of these cases thus far, we are winning, but assuming that we lose at the United States Supreme Court, it's going to hurt our bottom line. And so we need strategic planning at this point in time on possible cuts and programs and funding. When I'm going to be okay. I want to thank everyone for their emails, their texts, and whatever. I'm not afraid. I wake up every day with this fire in my belly. I'm just concerned about our state going forward and the loss of funds, possible loss of funds, and how it's going to impact programs for children, for seniors, public health, for public safety, World Trade Center, heroes and sheroes, and those who basically rely upon government. Government should not be a dirty word. Government should be a force for good. And that's why I decided to enter into public service, because I wanted to advance that public good so that there would be everyone all throughout the city and all throughout the state would have access and would have an opportunity.
You talked about defending our city and state. Also, this administration is investigating you, and I want to know if, given the case, if there's anything that you can say about it.
Is the civil case?
The civil case where DOJ, is it civil or civil and?
So I'm not sure what it is.
I'm going to say mortgage issues. Been reading about you in the press, I'll try to mortgage issues.
So I think what you said is, what is the status of the investigation against me?
Yes.
Okay. So the status of the investigation against me, I don't know. I don't know. They keep saying they're investigating me. I don't know. It involves, as you know, we filed a lawsuit against Donald Trump and his family. We secured $454 million judgment against him, which is on appeal. That case is on appeal. I have no idea when that case will be decided. This investigation into me is nothing more than retribution. It's baseless. It has to do with the fact that on a power of attorney, I mistakenly indicated that I was a state of Virginia, but prior to that, I had indicated to the mortgage broker that, in fact, in bold cap letters, that I am not a resident of Virginia and never will be. And in the mortgage application, I indicated that I would not live in Virginia and I was not a resident. They just took the power of attorney and they're using that as a basis for enforcement. for their investigation, when in reality, the power of attorney it was never used to determine my eligibility for a mortgage for my niece for a home in the state of Virginia. My niece who has children, and because I am a good aunt, I wanted her to have a home.
Right, to the audience for a few questions.
Oh, Brooklyn Hospital is in the house.
They bring out a mic for you. This is fantastic. Throughout your career, you've had success with reforms and policy changes throughout a myriad of issues, particularly public safety. What has led to your success, and what are some of the lessons learned through that process?
So thank you for that question. I think DA Clark is here from the Bronx, right here, Darcel Clark. DA Gonzalez might be here, and DA Katz. Okay, now Melinda. So I had a conversation early this morning with the Bronx Borough President, Vanessa Gibson, as well as District Attorney Clark. I'm sure you've been reading youth violence, particularly gun violence, is on the increase, particularly in the borough of the Bronx. Darcel told me about a 13-year-old having a gun, a 14-year-old having a gun, kids under the age of 16 dying as a result of gun violence. She was successful, her and the coalition, as well as with Melinda and others, in securing reforms to discovery. I supported those reforms with regards to discovery. That will help. What else do we need? Next year, obviously, we all need to come together to look at raise the age, because again, youth violence is on the increase. We also need to look at providing funds to programs. Darcel indicated to me that, in fact, the violence interrupters, the individuals who basically are former gang members who go out to the street to try to resolve conflicts and try to talk individuals from using guns, all of their funds have been cut. All of their funds. I've heard from violence interrupters in Queens and in Brooklyn that their funds have been cut, and the question is, what can you do? And my answer to them is we don't have standing because it's discretionary funds from this administration, or the former administration and the president. And so we can't bring any litigation with regards to those funds. When individuals are released on their own recognizance, they're supposed to have programs. The programs just aren't there. There are individuals struggling in the city of New York from mental illness. Again, I want to thank the governor, the state of New York, for all that she is doing to address mental illness, but we don't have beds. We don't have supportive beds. Hospitals have closed from previous administrations. We just don't have the tools and resources to deal with all of the challenges. And a lot of the young people who talk to me, talk to Darcel, talk to a number of elected officials all throughout the city and all throughout the state said, hey, you want me out of this gang? I need a job. I need a job. I need a job. And the question is, where are those jobs? What are we doing? Yes, we're adding more police, but we're constantly giving police more duties, more responsibilities. And providing police is not going to address the fundamental issue, and that is investment in the Bronx and investments in Brooklyn, particularly in those hot spots that we are seeing in the city of New York and in upstate New York as well. There's a wide range of solutions, but it requires a federal government, cooperation with the federal government. And right now, the federal government basically wants to eliminate funding for all of these programs. And I'm concerned that it's going to just cause more harm to the city of New York and the loss of more lives.
Antonio.
General James, first of all, let me say how appreciative I am on your efforts on the 9/11 healthcare program. I'm here with the author of that legislation in Congress, former Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney, and the Port Authority Commissioner Liz Fine. So we are well represented here and really appreciate that, and we're joining you in that battle. However, you mentioned birthright, and that is a huge issue. And your leadership there has been extraordinary. The Solicitor General of New Jersey just spoke brilliantly before the Supreme Court on this effort. This is a metro region that's populated by a huge immigration community, and they are extremely concerned where is their end of the tunnel, light at the end of the tunnel of this madness. are there services that your office can provide to help them through this particular moment in time? It is really scary for a lot of people.
If you followed the colloquy and the argument before the United States Supreme Court, it was primarily not based on the merits, the substantive argument over birthright citizenship, which is grounded in the 14th Amendment. It had more to do with nationwide injunctions. And it was mixed, and I counted at least 5 votes in support of basically continuing with the ability to issue nationwide injunctions. And there might be a test that they put forward. But again, it's really critically important that we have the tool of nationwide injunctions, because most of the actions that I mentioned have been brought by Democratic attorneys general representing blue states. And I don't want to leave children in red states out. I don't want to leave them stateless. I don't want to have a bifurcated system of birthright citizenship here in this country. It's unworkable, unsustainable. And so it's really critically important that the Supreme Court get it right. So the services that we have, as the Attorney General, I've been meeting with groups. I've been meeting with small businesses. We've been issuing guidances with respect to immigration. We've been meeting with elected officials. We have been meeting with houses of faith, which are really concerned about the EO, which basically allows ICE now to go into houses of faith for immigration enforcement. It was important that we explain to individuals about different kinds of warrants, judicial warrants, administrative warrants, individuals who are public-facing as opposed to private spaces and houses of worship. We do this on a weekly basis. In fact, I'm meeting with members of the LGBTQ community tomorrow. They too have concerns with regards to all that is going on, not only with respect to their rights, but also immigration as well. So we've been meeting, we continue to meet, we continue to have Know Your Rights campaigns, Know Your Rights town hall meetings. We are willing and able to have Know Your Rights campaigns and town halls with all of the organizations that are here today. It's important that individuals be empowered, and the best way to be empowered is with knowledge.
All right, and with that, it's 10 o'clock. Tish, I'm going to say thank you for standing up for us. We're grateful.
Thank you.